presentation, we might as well get going. And there's a big picture of a train that's going to the Mall of America, so it must be the Blue Line. Welcome, everybody. I'm calling this meeting of the CMC, the Corridor Management Committee, April 8th. Call it to order. Just a couple little housekeeping reminders. We are being recorded by Met Council, and it is available for viewing once we post it. And then, of course, by the governor's order, this is a virtual meeting for the safety of all of our community members. If you have any questions, and if you're tuning in from the public, and you would like to or have any concerns or any comments or any thoughts, please email Sophia Guinness. That's sophia.ginis@metrotransit.org. And if you do that, you have until another week, until Friday, April 16th, and those comments and questions will be compiled and posted on the website. And also a reminder that the meeting handouts, all the presentations, are also going to be posted at the website, which is bluelineext.org. So just as a way of making sure we have a quorum and seeing who's in the room, why don't I call out by organization, and everybody can introduce themselves. And maybe I'll start by calling out if there are any Met Council members there. I'll start with myself, Charlie Zelli, Chair. Any other council members in the room? All right, well, how about Hennepin County?
Good afternoon, everyone. Irene Fernando's here, Hennepin County Commissioner, District 2.
Hi, Irene. Brooklyn Park.
Hi, Tanya West Hafner, Mayor Pro Tem is here from Brooklyn Park.
Welcome. Crystal.
Hi, Jim Adams, Mayor of Crystal.
Mayor.
Hey,
Robbinsdale.
Chair, this is Ely Farhat on behalf of Commissioner Green.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair Zelli, this is Jeff Lunny, County Commissioner, District 1. Sorry.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I know you got meetings back to back, so we were going to come back to you. Robbinsdale.
Bill Blonigan, Mayor of Robbinsdale. Thanks for inviting us.
Great. Welcome. Golden Valley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Shep Harris, Golden Valley Mayor.
Shep.
And I'm Jillian Rosenquist, Golden Valley City Council, and Mayor Harris's alternate.
Jillian. All right, Minneapolis.
Good afternoon, Chair. Abdi Salam, Mayor Fry's alternate.
Abdi. Any other?
Everyone, Philippe Cunningham, council member for the 4th Ward, just here in support of the work. Thanks.
Welcome, Philippe. Brooklyn Center.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mayor Elliott, Brooklyn Center.
Mayor. New Hope.
Kathy Hemken, the Mayor of New Hope. Thanks for having me.
Kathy. Maple Grove.
Mike Opatz is aboard, staff for City of Maple Grove, alternate for Mayor Mark Stephenson.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Osseo.
Hi, Alicia Vickerman, council member in Osseo, non-voting member.
All right. The Minneapolis Park Board.
Meyer, Commissioner for District 1.
Welcome. The Blue Line Coalition.
Hi, Nicole Bueller for the Blue Line Coalition.
Hi. Community Advisory Committee.
Hi, this is Jason Greenberg, one of the co-chairs for the CAC.
Welcome. And how about the BAC? I know we're going to have Business Advisory Committee.
Felicia Perry, one of the co-chairs of the Business Advisory Committee.
Mike Steinhauser, also co-chair, Business Advisory Committee.
Welcome, Felicia and Mike. How about the MAC, the Metropolitan Airports Commission?
Good afternoon, everyone. Bridget Rafe, Vice President for Planning and Development with MAC.
Great. And MnDOT?
Mike Barnes, MnDOT's Metro District Engineer.
All right, Mike, thanks for being here. And Metro Transit. All right, well, I know where they live, so we can speak for them. That's great. So we have a good turnout. Welcome, everybody. We'll move on to the what we're calling the meeting summary, which should have been sent out in advance. That's the April 4th, really the minutes. If there are any edits or any concerns, otherwise I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Jim Adams moves approval.
Thank you. All right, is there a second?
Mike Elliott, second.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, I think we're going to have a quick roll call. Dawn, can you handle that? Is Dawn with us?
Yes.
He is maybe having trouble unmuting. Don, we can't hear you.
I don't know. Sophia, do you want to pitch in for that?
Yes, I just have to pull up the roll real quick. Sorry, everyone. I did not have
No problem.
that geared up. And of course, my network is not letting me in. We'll wing it a little bit. So maybe I can do it by district. So Hennepin County.
Fernando votes aye.
Lundy votes aye.
Ely Farhat on behalf of Commissioner Green.
Brooklyn Park.
Mayor Pro Tem Tanya West Hafner votes aye.
Crystal.
Jim Adams votes aye.
Robbinsdale.
Mayor Blonigan votes aye.
City of Minneapolis.
Abdisala votes aye.
Minneapolis Park Board.
Meyer, aye.
MAC.
Reef votes aye.
MnDOT.
Mike Barnes votes aye.
BAC.
Jason Greenberg votes aye.
Skip Shep. Golden Valley.
Ironically, Golden Valley Mayor Shep Harris votes aye.
Not intentional.
Not intentional. And of course, your face reminded me going off.
Just a fellow resident of ours ironically forgot her own city. That's all.
It right
happens.
behind me. Let's see. And our Met Council members.
Councilmember Chavez votes aye.
Robert Lilligren votes aye.
And Chair Zelli votes aye.
And I don't believe Wes is on yet to vote for Metro Transit, but in case he is.
Right, I think Did you get everybody? Thank you, Sophia, for jumping in. You did a great job. And with those minutes are going to be.
I think you missed Brooklyn Center.
Oh.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Brooklyn Center.
Brooklyn Center votes aye.
Thank you.
I will do a general call. There we go.
Nicole Bueller, Blue Line Coalition, aye.
Thank you. Missed a few. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. All right, general call. Did we get everybody? Did anybody else like to vote? All right.
Some of us would like to.
Blue Line Coalition.
Yeah, I know. We're getting to that. Those minutes were approved, and they're going to be posted on the website. This brings us to some committee reports, and we'll start with a CAC. I believe, Jason, was that you? Maybe followed by the Business Advisory Committee and Felicia. But go ahead, Chair Jason.
Yeah. So we had a meeting earlier this week, back last night, and talked about some of the feedback that we're getting through surveys, town halls, things that are going on for community engagement, and some of the different themes and things that are coming up from the community. We talked about the community engagement cohort and the different groups that are helping to get the word out about the Blue Line extension and get feedback. We also talked a lot about communities in place and supporting communities in place. So a lot of great discussion around, what does success look like for that? What are some of the goals and what do we want to accomplish in, addressing communities and making sure that we are equitable in this project. So lots of great discussion. I think, a number of items to follow up on for our next meeting in May. And yeah, that's pretty much a summary of where we're at right now.
Great. Thanks, Jason. We're just getting going. Felicia, do you have a report on the BAC?
Sure, thank you. Felicia Perry. The BAC, very similarly to the CAC, also reviewed a bit of like the survey results. So we got a report back around the survey results, and we're able to respond a bit to that. We also, similar to the CAC, talked about the community engagement activities. And so I think part of where, BAC is really wanting to, my organization is different because we're part of the engagement cohort, but being able to connect with the engagement folks is great. We were able to get a list of who is a part of that, as well as the other committees, to kind of wrap all of our heads around all the other things that are going on around this project. So I think that was really helpful for us. And then we did also spend time talking about the portion around supporting communities in place. And we had a discussion and went a little bit different than it did on the CAC. So let me make sure I separate them in my mind. There were different concerns raised on the BAC level around the timing of when we start thinking about anti-displacement and gentrification. There were also plenty of responses that we feel like now is the time. Some people thought that perhaps we should wait, but ultimately we landed on we're all figuring this out together. This is something that some of us have never done before, or possibly even thought of in this particular context with a project so big, but we all think that it's definitely important. So we're excited to see what becomes of that working group. Myself, for sure. So yeah, that's pretty much what we have from here. And I don't know if Matt had anything to add.
Well, I really appreciate that, and we can't start too early, and these are issues we're going to be wrestling with all along the way. Really appreciate that report. Does anybody have any questions for either committees?
Chair, I just this is Mayor Elliott, I just want to support the report and also underscore the report's comments and your comments around the need to start now and to start as early as we can because we know that the wheels already probably are already in motion in terms of speculation on property along the line, and that's only going to increase as we get closer to defining you know, a new alignment.
Well said. Thank you, Mayor. If there are not any more questions, we'll move on to a discussion about our corridor management committee membership. I promised a number of times that we should have this as an agenda item and to kind of talk it through both the review and kind of see where we stand. I thought I'd maybe just give a little bit of background and then have an opportunity for us to answer questions and have a conversation. First off, just to remind everybody, as a way of background, the whole purpose of the CMC is as an advisory group, particularly on the design and the construction, but many other issues that come as we define the alignment and we march forward. And I think that you can see some of the key areas that may sound technical, but they're not. They're very much community oriented and have great implications for the livability of the economy and the impacts, both positive and negative, is what we're addressing. So the idea of having this CMC is so critical, and I really embrace its importance. It has been a commitment, certainly of mine, to get as many people in the room at the table to be heard and to listen because we're kind of all doing this together. And we know that this corridor is much larger than just a line on a map. It is all the communities that are adjacent, and depending on how you look at it, we've been more inclusive, I think, than exclusive. So really in that spirit, we've added voices of Maple Grove, New Hope, Osseo. We actually included the Airport Commission, not just because of Crystal Airport, because of the importance that they play in this regional look. So I think that we really want to have as much of a full and a robust and a vibrant conversation as we kind of move forward. Having said that, there's certainly issues associated with project activities which belong to, once we have a permanent alignment, to those jurisdictions, those municipalities that actually have to take hard votes to allow for municipal consent and actually have to go through the process, which will become more formal, certainly in this project. So that is kind of the background. I just kind of want to at least open up the issue. I think, as I understand it, is we're here in the room. Who's got a vote? Who doesn't have a vote? We've committed to looking at the difference between voting membership and non-voting membership as we get toward a permanent decided alignment. But we've kind of kept it where we are now. But there's no secrets here, and I want to certainly give voice to those who have concerns or an opinion. And I think we could open it up. I don't know if I know Dan Solar, you have much more history to this than I do. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that. That just kind of a background piece.
Well, I mean, I think, Chair, just in general, the previous CMCs that were part of previous projects had member communities, cities, municipalities, member communities that had that the line was part of. That was how it was established. So when we did Central Corridor, St. Paul and Minneapolis were both voting member communities on the CMC. When we formed the Blue Line Extension Corridor Management Committee, we had included Minneapolis, Golden Valley, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park. Those 5 cities were voting members on, they all had parts of the alignment, they all had station areas, they all had parts of that. And I mean, the background escapes me a little bit, but at one point early on in the formation, in the early part of the formation of the Corridor Management Committee after 2015 for Blue Line Extension, a request was made and a decision was agreed to bring in and have Brooklyn Center be part of the Corridor Management Committee as a member, and we did that. And that was a decision by the chair and the Corridor Management Committee at that time to bring Brooklyn Center in as a voting member. We did that, and that's been the case ever since. When we realigned and put the realigned Corridor Management Committee together, now this time, now of course we've got a Corridor Management Committee working on a project that has an adopted alignment that's not likely to move forward and an unknown alignment option not yet determined exactly where it will go. So we've got voting members that may or may not have parts of the alignment in their city. We have non-voting members that do not have. We've got, so it's kind of a hodgepodge. So there's any number of different ways we could do this. We could make some changes now. We could also wait until such time that we actually have an alignment chosen, a route option chosen, and make some decisions about voting or non-voting members. Ultimately, it becomes the recommendation of both the chair and the committee on how they want to move forward. I mean, traditionally, this body has not been heavily a body on voting for things, but there are times when, especially as we set budgets and set pieces, that voting becomes important. So that's the background on what got us here today. I will say I am glad we have opened up participation to the adjacent cities, because I believe Maple Grove, Osseo, New Hope, Brooklyn Center, Golden Valley, all of those communities, while they may or may not have actual LRT alignment in their city, they are all in the corridor area. But voting and not voting, I think, becomes a matter of what the committee thinks is best.
Okay, let's, thanks, Dan. Let's open it up. And I know, Kathy, you have some thoughts, but we'll open it up to anybody else, or you want to start, whatever suits you.
Well, you know, the line comes very close to New Hope, and we have the same demographics as Brooklyn Center does. And it just seemed odd that we didn't get a vote, and we were never asked to join the CMC in the beginning. Apparently, we didn't make the request to do that. So I just want things to be equal and fair.
Fair. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Jim Adams from Crystal, Mayor of Crystal.
Sure.
A couple comments relating to where we are, how we've moved. You know, my understanding is the CMC is in existence based on legislation, and it's illustrated pretty directly as to what that looks like. However, in this situation, we don't have a defined line, and it's very difficult to you know, vote someone on the island, vote someone off the island at this point. Quite frankly, I don't believe that we should. I'm kind of interested in doing more of an inclusive type voting, you know, authority between now and the time the line is actually nailed down. And kind of going back to that voting off the island thing, I think once we get to that point where the line is more defined, I'd love to see us kind of go back to what the legislature had kind of set forth. It's those who are definitely on the line. We've had some experiences in the CMC with the old alignment where voting was very, very loose, and there were votes that were substantial, for Crystal especially, and there were people who literally weren't members voting. And I think when we get down to dealing with scope and we start dealing with all the real decisions after the line has been determined, I think that's where we kind of pare it back. And we don't make it about popularity. We make it about kind of what the legislature kind of set out. But at this point in the game, I don't feel comfortable trying to restrict. Just throwing that on the table.
That's really well stated. Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else want to express an opinion? Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's Shep Harris from Golden Valley. Golden Valley would be supportive of including New Hope because we continue to say over and over again, this is a project of regional significance. And we know for fact, based on research, that regional projects like this don't just stop at a boundary, that they go beyond boundaries. They know no boundaries and have direct and indirect impacts for generations to come. So we would, in Golden Valley, be very supportive of New Hope, not just because they're a neighbor of ours, but that too.
So Bill Blonigan of Robbinsdale, if I might be recognized.
Please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Robbinsdale would be supportive of that too. I want Brooklyn Center to have input. I want New Hope to have input. I understand that they're both either a golf club shot away or maybe a par 5 hole away, not that far away. They should have input. Golden Valley is, except for Golden Valley, Robbinsdale has the most change under this new alignment. And parenthetically, I noticed that Dan Solar said that adopting the old alignment is unlikely, which reminds me of a movie. So you're saying there's a chance, but getting back to the main part of it, I would be supportive of New Hope, and we're a advisory committee. So if it ends up that there's some vote at the end that's 10-10, or had New Hope not been there, it would have been 10-9. I think the members of the Met Council are independent enough that you're going to look at any votes and you're not going to just say, oh my gosh, it was 10-9, I got to go that way. So the more input, the better.
Chair Zelli?
Yes.
Commissioner Lundy, just
go ahead, Jeff.
I'm sorry, I'm off camera because internet's a little flaky right now. My kids are hitting remote learning. Just want to say, I think we're stronger when the more people are involved, and I think, letting New Hope, I think for their residents to feel that they see they have vote, and a vote does matter. I think it allows them to feel to the point that we want their full engagement and their input is well taken. And so that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, I sense a growing consensus that we include New Hope, and I presume that means Osseo and Maple Grove as well. Is that fair?
Chair Zelli, this is Alicia Vickerman from Osseo. I wouldn't mind giving some input as well.
Well, your voice matters.
It is a little bit of a piggyback, this being a regional project. We all have interest in some way. I know for Osseo, we kind of want to minimize our boundary and kind of being able to get to this once we do have a more defined line. So, if it was possible to open it up, we'd like to be included as much as we can. We have a lot of interest in this as well, even though it might not be going through our little pocket here. Thank you.
Chair.
Thank
you.
Chair Zelli,
this is Mayor Elliott.
Yes, Mayor, go ahead.
All right. I Thank you for the time. I just want to speak up in on behalf of Brooklyn Center. I know that the line didn't quite go through. Brooklyn Center came really close. From our perspective, I think one of the significant pieces of information to consider about Brooklyn Center is that we currently have the region's transit hub, and in our city, I believe we have the number 1 and 2 either original onboarding or transfers second only to the Mall of America. And so Brooklyn Center plays a significant role already in transit for the north here. And so I think one of the reasons why, and again, I wasn't there, but I think one of the reasons why Brooklyn Center was at the table was because there had to be serious consideration given to how that regional transit hub would connect to the line. And that is incredibly important. And in fact, in doing so, in connecting that regional transit hub to the line, would potentially require some decisions to be made here in our city connected to the Blue Line as well. So I want to keep that in mind. And Mayor Hemken stated that we have the same demographics. Mayor Hemken, I love you, but I don't think we do. We have a community. I mean, Mayor Hemken has a very diverse community. We share a lot of the same populations, quite honestly. We just have some 60+% BIPOC people in our community here that are really heavily transit dependent. I think all of our communities are transit dependent, but I think Brooklyn Center more so than probably any other community, save for, let's say, parts of North Minneapolis that's on the call here. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well. And as we're having the discussion around, who's at the decision-making table, I think our community does reflect in our leadership at the table here, I think, some perspective that may not have been at the table before. And I want to be careful in how I say that, because we all represent our communities. But it should be kept in mind as well in terms of just how diverse this northern Hennepin County area is, and making sure that we have also that type of diversity in the decision-making table, because that's going to enrich the decisions we make ultimately for our region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me, Chair Zell, Denise Butler coming in here.
Oh, please.
Representing the Blue Line Coalition, currently employed at Acer. And so I kind of wanted to piggyback on some of what Mayor Elliott just shared here, and why we are even a part of this conversation, we being the BLC, and getting the 2 representatives that we have as a voting body. It was advocacy on our part to be at this table, because we saw the importance, and us being at this table was a historical win, because traditionally we have not been a part of such a transit table, communities of color. And then so as we asked for cities that weren't at the table to come and join the conversation now, you got to put it out there that I believe sometimes the leadership, maybe past, previous, did not choose to be, because they didn't see the benefits or opportunities. And now we fast forward, these voices are coming to the table because they see the benefits and opportunity. And I'm all for having voices at the table. That's what we advocate for every day. But just to notice that we don't have a lot of BIPOC leadership at this table, representing our community. And so we want to be mindful of that new folks are not going to come and kind of undo what we have fought to do and establish here by being a part of this table. So just want us to take that into consideration as we advocate for what this new alignment could be, or the possibility of keeping the existing alignment as well, moving forward. And so as I'm open to having more voices at the table, I'm also being cautious of the leadership that is coming to the table and how diverse that leadership is in their representation.
Okay, thank you for that perspective.
Chair Zally, it's Mike Opatz from Maple Grove.
Hey, Mike, I was waiting to hear from you. Good, go ahead.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Mayor Stephenson could not join the meeting today, but with this discussion, I assume that the city would welcome Maple Grove being a voting member as well, because as we are certainly within the project's influence, and I think a recent big data study showed that the Maple Grove shopping area was a top 5 destination point of interest of all of the Twin Cities. And we have some really strong housing and job growth in the area. So I think we certainly would welcome being a voting member as well. So we would appreciate that option and opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for that perspective. Does anybody have anything else to add? Because I would just summarize, I think we've got a growing interest that we be more inclusive during this period of time in defining the alignment. It'd be one thing if we had one and then we could point to the legislative guidance, but at this point, really bringing in these 3 cities as voting members, at least during this period of time until we define the alignment and the next the route in the next this year, and then we evaluate the voting nature is kind of what I heard. And if that's true, is there anybody would like to make a motion that we make that change?
Commissioner Lundy would make the motion. Do we make that change?
Thank you, Jeff.
Mayor Adams, second.
Okay, Mayor Adams, second. Any further discussion on this?
Sorry.
And again, I'm sorry. Yep.
Could you, Chair Zell, could you state what exactly the motion is that we've put on the table? I'm not sure what that motion is. Is there some way to have it written and put on the screen for people to review the motion?
Sure. Maybe while I can ask Sophia or Dawn to actually write out, which is the motion, as I understand it, is to make a shift in the membership to expand the voting members by 3 additional communities: the city of Maple Grove, the city of New Hope, and the city of Osseo. And that they would be included as voting members. That's not to preclude that we would add additional non-voting members, but we would have that at least during this period of time until the alignment, the route is defined. And then we would reevaluate the voting membership. And I think if you go to the chat, maybe Sophia's kind of written it out.
Trying to write as fast as you're talking.
So
Okay.
the motion should also direct the staff to do whatever is necessary in the bylaws or whatever documents we have to amend them to so reflect that motion.
And Commissioner Lundy, who made the motion, would undoubtedly accept that as a friendly amendment that we would direct staff to make whatever. Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, I know that Sophia is writing, but any other discussion, question about what it is that we're going to be voting on to expand the voters during this period of time?
Chair Zelle, this is Mayor Elliott.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, I support the motion. You know, I I have thought that New Hope should be at the table. I do want also to have a look at how we can, look at the leadership also in terms of balancing equity and representation of the region and who's at the table. So, Chair, I would request that maybe staff takes a look at that and maybe ask some of our advocates and representatives that are been part of this process to also look at that, because ultimately that will have an impact on some of the issues, very weighty issues that we're considering, such as, how to stave off displacement in the region. And so I would just ask that we take a look at that question as well.
Okay, the question is about, thank you, Mayor. And I think everybody heard what you're describing. Are we having the true representation, the BIPOC representation of leadership as we are making important decisions and fleshing these issues out? It's fair. Okay, are we ready to call the roll for a vote on what was?
I have one more question. This is from Councilmember Chambliss, Council.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Riva.
I'm just thinking that we might need some more clarification on the reason for adding the non-voting members, so that it's clear when we have to revisit this again. Are we setting a precedent? I just want it to be really clear, because if there are other non-voting members that want to get added, what are we using as the rationale? I mean, to be inclusive, obviously, is what we're saying, but it's just wanted to get more clarification on the reason for the change and getting that documented.
That's a great point, and I think because if we were revisiting this 9 months from now, we want to make sure what was it that we made this change. And I think rather than wait during this meeting, I'm just going to suggest that we actually have a little bit more clear to capture from our notes in the conversation that there was a nexus of influence, that the adjacent communities played a significant role in this travel shed, and that there was very specific examples of transit hubs, shopping, other things that were kind of traffic generators and influenced this kind of decision at the time that we are determining the alignment, as opposed to the alignment is already set. If that is the sense that I got, and we need to put better language around that, which we can review at our next meeting when we approve the minutes, and maybe we make a point of reviewing that.
Chair, if I may, let me try to help bring this.
May I speak after Dan? I don't know how else to be able to do that. I've tried some other ways without interrupting, is what I was trying to avoid. But may I speak after you, Dan?
Alicia, go ahead. You go ahead, then I'll kind of summarize. Absolutely.
I missed your hand. Go ahead.
Similar to some other folks, I think it might have been Riva who recently spoke. For me, it's a lot of things are not clear, and it sounds like an important vote is about to be made that, for lack of a better word, I feel uncomfortable with. I heard a word we want to be more inclusive now, and that's just such an interesting word to use in a space like this. And it appears that what are we including, would be the question. And then I also want to amplify the note around further representation in other areas. This isn't equitable as it is right now. I'm in an area that's got 2 different routes that we're supposed to be looking at. And so that's not clear. And I'm still not clear on who's voting and who's not, from even who's on this call right now. So that's another thing that's not clear that would make me uncomfortable around this vote as well.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm going to suggest something maybe, but we want to hear from Dan, that we actually have this vote when we actually have something written that has some thought behind it to get that clarity. And I'm not sure we're able to do that in this meeting right this second. So we might have that vote next month. But I think your point is that there's a lot of different aspects to this conversation.
Well, Chair,
Go ahead, Dan.
I just want to at least start here to summarize what Mayor Adams had said before. The Corridor Management Committee that oversees the implementation of an LRT project is a defined committee by state statute. So state statute identifies the committee, and state statute identifies, at least initially, it identifies the minimum representation that it have. And I don't know the state statute off the top of my head. I'm not going to try to read it today. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to try to interpret it today. But the fact is, it is a committee that's established in statute. And so, but it's also a committee that's established in statute based on furthering an alignment of an LRT project, because it says it somewhere in the statute, it defines communities who have station areas within the alignment. Okay. And so where we're in a little different spot right now is we're in this period of time when we don't have a formal alignment. I mean, we have one that we're now working on amending. And so we don't have a set alignment. So the membership is looking a little bit differently. I might suggest that rather than taking action today on this topic, that we will summarize kind of a recommendation for a corridor management committee today in this time period, and then how that might change when an alignment is adopted and how it meets the statute accordingly. So that will at least allow this for some additional discussion. We will get that information out in advance of the next corridor management committee meeting so that people can ruminate on it a little bit, because there are a number of other places where we want to, besides just the corridor management committee, where we've got abilities for people to engage and different tables to work at, one of which we're going to talk about today on our agenda around anti-displacement. And so not that that's the end all, but that might help, rather than people, because it is a little bit unclear now. Well, just what are people voting on, and what is the agenda for, and which ones are members, and how is it different, and how are we, let us kind of bring some language around that and send that out to committee members and bring it forward next time.
Chair Zell, if I may, this is Tim Baylor. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Tim?
Good. I officially represent the Robbinsdale Chamber of Commerce, but as you may know, I operate businesses in Minneapolis and Robbinsdale, and there's been a long time resident of Minneapolis. And I want to reiterate what I think I heard Denise, Riva, and Felicia trying to convey. And when you look at the size and the impact of this rail, phases 1, 2, and 3, the city of Minneapolis has the most representation in terms of potential customers, potential population, and potential diversity. And it seems to be a little incongruent to have only one representative from the city of Minneapolis when you consider its size and scale, and the impact of maybe having to decide which route we're going to go through Minneapolis. And so when we reset and look at how we allocate these membership votes, would it be appropriate to weight some of those votes to the city of Minneapolis? That's just a question.
Right. Well, and thank you for that, perspective, and I think that actually gives some credence to Dan's suggestion that this isn't a simple vote to add 3 that we want to include, but it's a precedent, and it also opens up a lot of other concerns regarding representation. So if the membership is comfortable, I'm going to suggest we table this vote until next time and wait for actual explicit language and a little deeper kind of consideration of some of these issues, and that the staff will come with a recommendation, well in advance, so that we can kind of think about it and maybe even give input before the next meeting, and then we'll take it up as an agenda item after we have something new, a recommendation to actually look at. Is there a sense that that would be acceptable?
Yes.
Yes.
I would go by the people who made the motion if they're willing to do that.
The motioner is fine. I think the best way to do is withdraw the motion and let the staff report come back and then do a motion off of that. So Commissioner Lundy would withdraw his motion. Like that would be
Thank
the easiest way
you.
to.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is where good elected parliamentarians will help me here. But you have withdrawn, and I.
The second agrees.
Second agrees. There you go. So the motion is off the table, and we're gonna come with some clarity. We've gathered a lot of really kind of good comments and considerations, and I think we're going to ask for staff to wrestle with that. And if those who have additional thoughts, feel free to contact me or Dan or Sam when she's back. I'm sorry she couldn't be here today. And then we will be able to pick this up with some better understanding about what it is we're voting on. We got a good sense, but I think you're right. The devil's in the details, so let's get it right. Thanks, everybody, for this really good conversation, and I'm glad we had time on the agenda to kind of spend enough time to, get it right. All right. Well, I want to get into really important work on the community engagement activities. So, if everybody's okay, let's jump to the next agenda item, and that's where Sophia Guinness and Joan Van Hello is going to give us some feedback that we've been hearing and what we've received about route options. And I'll turn that over to you. Go ahead, Sophia.
Thank you, Chair. Today, I just want to give a little update to the committee on what we are hearing so far, also recognizing that we are still in a very active engagement phase, and we're hoping to hear from many others as we get deeper into our work. So as we heard kind of from our co-chairs early in the agenda, we've been talking to our advisory committees both about the route options as well as our later agenda item about getting the anti-displacement table together. We had 3 town hall meetings, and we're over about 150 people attended, and we had some really great discussion. Most of the meeting was discussion. And we're starting to get into having those more community and business stakeholder check-ins, kind of the smaller group or even big group reaching additional people. We have an interactive map. I'll show a picture of that in a second, which has over 200 comments. People are able to reply to each other. Some folks are making multiple comments, such as desired station areas or issues or opportunities that they're identifying. When I put the slide together, we had received about 700 comments on the survey. We are getting closer to 800, and I want to get probably triple that number before it closes. We've also been receiving just general comments online from folks, about 20 plus comments coming in officially and then many more folks reaching out just to talk about the project, ask very specific questions. Been having a lot of conversations with folks that want to get into the project details, both specific to their area as well as overall desires. So from all of these activities, again, if you want to kind of get into some of these and see this more, the interactive map, these are all public comments that you can click into. So from all of these activities, there's certain themes that are emerging that we just want to highlight quickly for all of you today, and I'm sure we'll hear more as the month or so goes on. But overall, we've heard a general support for LRT, a real desire to see the transit solution come through. But with that, folks are at the point where they just need a lot more information. There's a lot of questions. So that's kind of the biggest thing is I'm really excited about LRT, but I need you to fill in the details a little bit for me. And with that, a couple of the most specific things that we're hearing about is just what does this look like in my roadway? You know, how does this all fit together? What are these pedestrian connections? And kind of how it all fits in with adjacent homes and business. There's a lot of conversation about the desire to preserve businesses, especially some of the gems that we have within our community. And then there's basically 3 other major places that we've been hearing a lot about. First is stations. Kind of in our most northern section, we have in Brooklyn Park, we have identified station locations from our previous alignment. But where we've diverged and need to place new stations, that is often the #1 question. Because when you think about the benefit of LRT, where you can go and where you can get off and how it connects is obviously the forefront of that conversation. With that, the overall infrastructure piece is really, why would you build a tunnel? Could you elevate it? How do you go through that process? Really wanting to get into those details. And the conversation around possible structures and how it fits into the roadway are very much coupled. With kind of this day and age, the push and focus on green infrastructure and folks commenting and thinking about that is also something that's really emerging. And when we say green infrastructure, both comments around having a transit-oriented lifestyle and really supporting pedestrian connections, as well as pushing our project design to think more about green infrastructure, whether that's stormwater management or how we deal with landscaping and planting and all of that. So that's something that has come forth more than I think I've heard in the past as I've done engagement, and so that's why I want to bring that forward. So like I caveated before, I want to share some very preliminary survey results, but again, these numbers by the time we're done might look very different. So just want, as we look at these, to keep this in mind. We still have to hear from a lot of folks, but so far, about 55% of folks that took the survey answering the question of what alignment they would most like to see advance picked West Broadway. About 22% suggested Lowry Avenue, and then we have about 23% that either selected they need more information or they had another reason, whether that was a different suggestion or that they didn't favor LRT. But most of that number is just give me more information and then I'll select between those couple. We talked briefly at this committee a month or two ago about the project goals, and that's something that we need to bring back in future. There's also a question on our survey, and we asked folks to kind of rate what's most important to them. And of the 6 project goals, 2 kind of emerged as the most favored among folks. So 60% of folks said that the transit access to jobs and regional destinations was most important to them, followed by the desire to advance local and regional equity, as well as working towards reducing regional racial disparities, kind of emerged as our main things. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Joan Van Hala, to talk about our community engagement cohort that has just begun their work.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm having a little, there, okay. Joan Van Hala, I'm engagement specialist at Hennepin County. We are currently fully contracted with 14 groups in the corridor. These groups are trusted community partners who have expertise in their cultures and the geographies and the different areas within the corridor. We contracted with an eye for making sure we were covering the needs of each of the areas, and each of the areas do have different engagement needs. 4 of these groups are focused on just amplifying our project communications. We're definitely coordinated and collaborative with all the 14 groups that are currently contracted, along with the Blue Line LRT project management team. These are 10-month contracts, so they started mid-March and they'll go to the end of January 2022. So Sophia, if you can go to, or whoever. I'm really honored to be working with this team of community-based experts. They're awesome. Some of these groups have been working within the Blue Line LRT corridor since 2014 on different issues, whether that was stationary planning or advanced planning. And some of these are new groups that are bringing a fresh perspective. We do have a focus on BIPOC communities and ensuring that their voices are heard in the corridor. So if we can go to the next slide. So this community engagement cohort will engage their robust networks, cultural communities, African American, African immigrant, Asian Pacific Islanders, Latino. We'll also be, we have quite a few groups that are connecting directly with small businesses, youth and young adults, neighborhood organizations, and the arts community. They're going to be applying these strategies and tactics. Big help in amplifying the Blue Line LRT project information through their community channels. They'll be hosting virtual listening sessions, pop-ups at community events and businesses, focus groups, one-on-ones with key stakeholders, and creative engagement through the art, along with in-person surveys. So we've had 2 orientation sessions, and we've begun our monthly check-in session on yesterday, actually. So I'm truly excited and honored to be working with these groups.
If I may ask, jump in right here. Councilmember Philippe Cunningham from Minneapolis. I'm just curious as to where the decision came from to not include Indigenous Native folks in the cultural communities.
If we could just step back one slide. It wasn't an intentional exclusion of Indigenous peoples. I know that there is a really active American Indian education program in the Osseo School District. We had an open RFP process where we had, and then we selected from that. The proposal evaluators felt that there was a need to fill in a gap with neighborhood groups, especially in North Minneapolis. So that's how we ended up, actually one slide more back, that's how we ended up with this current cohort. This list and these groups doesn't mean that we're not going to be reaching out to all residents in the corridor. And Councilmember Cunningham, if you in your office has some direct contacts to Indigenous organizations that we should be sure to be connecting with within the Blue Line LRT corridor, we want to hear about that. We also have a full complement of project staff who do engagement, like myself, Sophia, along with communication staff. And so we're fully committed to providing comprehensive engagement for this year and beyond.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that additional information, and we're happy to follow up with recommendations. Thank you.
Super, thanks.
Thank you for that. And part of our next steps as well is to identify the geographies and gaps that we need to have a fully inclusive conversation. Another example is one that was brought up at our CAC of this being very intentional about reaching out to folks that have disabilities in various forms. So that is definitely the charge of the engagement team as we move forward in our work. And we do appreciate the connections and suggestions as well as we dive into the stakeholders that we need to connect with. Kind of also with our next steps is really to have a lot of more indirect or direct conversations with various groups and work with the project team. We're starting to hear a lot. We also need to be responsive to it. And so that is part of our charge as we move forward in the next month. And with that, that is our engagement update.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Joan. this is really great work, and I know we have so much more to do, but we're off to a good start. Any questions from the committee for this work?
So I just wanted to call out really quickly just some conversations that came up in the CEAC last night. As far as like general themes and feedback, I think the CAC did have a conversation around safety also being a major theme that we're all hearing feedback on, and wanting more information on that. And then we did talk a little bit about there's great work going on as far as the community engagement cohort. And so we definitely appreciate that, but a lack of designated focus in area 2 also came up.
Okay. Good. Any other thoughts before we move on? Go ahead.
Just real quickly, how would staff like to be kept abreast of, like, I know Commissioner Fernando and I are doing smaller engagements, driveway engagements, things that will fall underneath engagement but may not be part of this structured. We'll be reaching out to the Robbinsdale council members over the weekend to start getting dates laid down and start putting stuff together. And so I think that's going to be a big deal, because we've had probably over a dozen people interested in hosting them, not just beyond the elected. So I know that's engagement. I also know it's outside of engagement, but how best can we keep this CMC aware of those activities, or Commissioner Fernando?
Yeah, it's great you're doing that work, Jeff. And I also think we got to make sure we're aligned, and maybe working through Joan and Sophia is the best way.
Yes.
Chair, I think as we get that, thanks, Joan. As we get that information, Commissioner, about events, I mean, we've got events that are coming from the cohort. We've got events that come out just through our project management team. We've got events that will come out through, like, for example, Commissioner, the Facebook Live event that's coming up. We've got that on our radar. So the best we can coordinate all that together just kind of helps balance who's doing what, where, and when, as there will be so many different things going on.
Thank you. We'll do exactly that. Make sure everybody's up to date,
yeah.
And we're trying to share that out so anybody who wishes to participate is very much aware. Thank you.
And we can include also schedule of events and future presentations, so everybody can kind of get a flavor of what where we're out and about doing.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sure that when Sophia mentioned about doing outreach to the disability community, I'm sure that Courage Kinney would be happy to be used as a resource.
Great, it's right there. Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
In fact, Mayor, that was we did actually talk about that specifically yesterday.
Well, I want to leave time for this next agenda item, which is something that I think is really clear to me, and I think I speak on behalf of Met Council members and Hennepin County Commissioners, that we need to keep the idea of displacement and gentrification front and center. And we know that we want to be really not just engaged, but working through a view from the communities. And we know that some past transit building infrastructure practice over decades has really limited our credibility, and maybe partly why, developing trust and the best practice is going to be so challenging. But we know we really got to make it work, and I think there's clearly a commitment on the behalf of this committee, but also our staffs to be thoughtful in terms of how we approach a community impact in a positive way, knowing that there are positive attributes of some wealth creation, and but we got to do that without creating even greater disparities. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing from Dan and Sophia. And Dan, are you going to kick this off?
I will, Chair. Thanks. And thanks, everyone. We are very excited, let me say, as a project team to bring this topic and to bring this agenda about supporting communities to the CMC today. It's something we've heard since the beginning of let's get this project back on track, and that we've been thinking very thoughtfully about how best as a project team we can promote and develop and work on and advance these various topics that I'm going to talk about today. We've had the opportunity to present the information you're going to hear here to the Business Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee. We presented some of this information to the cohort, to the community engagement cohort yesterday as well. We've been taking some feedback and knowledge. This topic is big, and it is not something that we're going to present even now in even a more truncated fashion because of the timing we have left on our agenda, but it's one that we're going to engage on both now and throughout the implementation of this project. And so to kick this off, we've always talked about the things that happen in these various 4 boxes. This is a slide we've shared before, and we're going to spend a lot of time at this Corridor Management Committee in this upper right-hand box talking about engineering analyses and station locations and right-of-way impacts and where the best place to build LRT is and how it fits in roadways and adjacencies. And that is good. That's part of what the Corridor Management Committee needs to do. But as a project, what we want to talk about today is these bottom 2 boxes. And the next slide puts these on. These we now feel and have always felt that these are important parts about implementing a major capital project like an LRT line that are more than what is about where the tracks go, where the stations go, and how to safely operate LRT. This will focus our attention on addressing anti-displacement, on equity. This is where we focus on how and why and where development, community development happens in and around and along the corridor. This is also specifically and especially to this project, this is where we also focus on what about previous project commitments. We advanced for 5 years, longer in planning, and then for 5 years advanced a alignment option down Highway 55 and up the BNSF Railroad that while Mayor Blanigan took a minor chance of that happening, is in our view very unlikely to happen, but was a previous project commitment. So what about the things that we attempted to address as part of that alignment with that now going away? How do we still keep that front of mind, and how do we address those things? So these topics of addressing greater than the LRT piece is part of what we've heard has to be part of the discussion about the where, how, and why of the project itself. And it needs to start, and we would agree with what we heard from many at the Business Advisory Committee meeting this week, needs to start now, because these topics are important, even back to the old alignment, as well as where route options may be in the future. So it is not a thing to wait for, but a thing to work on now. So with that in mind, we want to kind of introduce what we've heard and where we want to take this moving forward.
So to center us a little bit in how this topic has really come up as an important focus of this project is as we began the discussion in August of a pathway forward, we heard very clearly from the community that displacement and gentrification issues were a major concern. And to that point as well, that as project sponsors, we have an obligation to work to address them, to really maximize that benefit of that LRT with strategies and policies that come in conjunction with the project. We heard today that the desire of the communities to be at the table, right? It is a collective effort. And with the previous alignment, investments remain. We also know that there's a lot of vibrancy in our communities and wanting to celebrate that with the work that we do. as well as expanding wealth and opportunities, and making sure that we're not just admiring the problem, that we're coming up with solutions and implementing them now and in the future. Dan, back to Dan for a second.
Sure. So, I mean, those two slides, and I know we went through them fairly quickly. Those two slides are our understandings as a project team of what we've heard and what the desires are of the community. And so as we've reflected on those things, these are some things that as a project team anyway, that we have reflected on, that we recognize that we're going to need to work together to address the community concerns at all levels and across sectors. This isn't about what the project may do. It isn't about city zoning. It isn't about any one specific thing. It's about how to address all the various community concerns, be they how do we build this during construction versus what's going to happen to my neighborhood versus how do we provide a vibrant workforce that builds this line in the community. We've heard a lot of really good things that came out of the business and community advisory committees over the last few days. We recognize that even just talking about this raises concerns over trust. Trust has been a huge issue in the past. What about past trauma that's happened? There is recognizable that transportation projects in the past have not only, in some cases, not brought the benefits desired, but actually brought the negatives and too many negatives. And so there is concern about that. And then do we have the sustainability? Are we willing to carry this through? Are we going to just bring this up to talk about it at a couple meetings and not follow through? All those are concerns that just talking about this project brings up and that I've heard from community members many times. We also recognize that there is no one size fits all thing, that there's a lot of different tools and the communities along this line, and even inside of communities, even individual neighborhoods along the line are different. And what might work in one area might not work in another. And how we provide, sustainable, equitable investments in one part of this alignment area may be different. So we need to recognize and have that tools are wide ranging and may be different in different parts of the area. On the next piece, we also realize that we need and we are going to make as a project team a commitment to address this. We recognize that there's a lot of community, there's a lot of voices that need a role here, from community groups, nonprofits, philanthropy, private entities. What can developers bring? What can financial entities bring to help address pieces in this space? There's short-term needs, there's long-term needs. How do we identify resources? There are things the project may be able to fund. There are things the project may be ineligible to fund. So how can we find resources at city levels, county levels, nonprofit entities, through philanthropy to help address the issues here? How do we tackle some of those? And how do we take actions that are tangible and measurable? We are not talking about putting together a group that studies the topic of gentrification or displacement associated with LRT. We want to bring together a working group that develops recommendations and solutions and tangible issues that we can bring forward on this element. Chair, I see Commissioner Fernando had a note in the chat and she has a comment.
Go ahead, Irene.
Thank you. So I really appreciate how this topic has been brought forward. So thanks to the project team. A couple of considerations just for transparency for the CMC. When I saw the agenda for the anti-displacement team, I hope that the project office is willing to consider that an issue identification table might be different than the solution creating table. I'll be more specific. When marginalized identities are expressing marginalization, where working class families families who have been negatively impacted by policies for decades or centuries. I've been around these tables before where we express these harms that have occurred, and then they put us on a table for a month and say, well, you figure out how to fix it. And so these harms have been perpetrated onto communities. And so how are we positioning for success the feedback, and at times the painful feedback that is coming in with some with what needs to be corrected. So I have been around tables where I felt that I was kind of pre-negotiating or diluting my position because I had to express my feedback while also coming up with the practical solution that should be implemented. And so I hope we have a little bit of space, especially since we don't have a uniform definition on anti-displacement. There's not a uniform definition on how gentrification is impacting each and every one of these communities. That has very, very, very meaningful, very, very important concerns that can and should and deserve to be addressed via this project. So I wanted to offer that in transparency. I provided this feedback to the project team when I was made aware of how this portion was progressing, and wanted to ensure that I had was able to share that transparently in this open group. And again, thrilled to see how this topic comes back in future CMCs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for expressing that important insight.
And Chair, thank you, Commissioner Fernando. And in fact, the next slide says exactly part of what you just identified, Commissioner, which is, one of the things is what displacement is, what gentrification is, what community benefits are different, and that there is no set definition. So that's going to be a different definition for different folks. So this is a discussion point for our agenda today. How do we come to some consensus about what these mean? Because they will be different, and that doesn't mean they have to be the same to everyone, but that's part of our starting point, as you've mentioned, commissioners, that people will bring different spots. And so that leads right into exactly where what you had talked about, exactly to where we've identified as a team.
And Chair, we have many questions today in our presentation that we really were hoping to get a lot of committee feedback on. And so maybe if you're okay with the suggested use of time is just kind of laying those questions out to the committee, and then using what time we have, but then having a further discussion on them as we roll forward. Just because I have a feeling there's a lot of robust conversation to have and not so many minutes.
And
that's a great suggestion.
This is not meant to be, and just so we don't, I feel that I want to make sure we don't like rush this and give this short shrift. This is an important topic that we did not envision completing, certainly at this CMC, and we are very much welcoming additional feedback on how this is, and in fact are even potentially suggesting that we may, Chair, like to suggest putting, after we kind of go through this, noticing a special CMC meeting in and of itself, just to engage in a discussion and feedback on these topics with committee members who may want to join in a less formal setting than this CMC meeting to discuss and engage on these topics.
Well, I thank you, Dan. I think that's an excellent idea because we only have a few minutes and we can't expect this is really just a beginning, not the place where we're going to resolve anything. And I think we have so much to learn. I'll speak for myself. I have so much to learn, and I think we want to get it right. And but we do have a few minutes. Thank you,
so,
Dan.
Sophia, just walk through what we've got here, and then.
Sounds good. So I'll try to do it a little quickly while also giving it the right time. So as we think about getting together next time, we want to spend a lot of time coming to our shared understanding and recognizing that what we mean, Commissioner Fernando already kind of laid that out, right? we want to work on building this table. So our overall goal is to establish this anti-displacement working group. We want to have multiple conversations both with you and our other advisory committees before we really get rolling. And a lot of the things that we're talking about will also come to them as well as they start to convene. So a couple tenets of that would be having a third-party facilitator, setting up a regular meeting schedule, tying back into our advisory committees, and really having a work plan. All things to talk about. And with that, we also really wanted to hear from all of you who would be that trusted facilitator. As we talked with BAC and CAC, there's both organizations, individuals within organizations that are known and trusted within the community. Part of getting to outcomes is really thinking about who can really help us further that mission in terms of philanthropic, nonprofit, private developments that can work at this table. And of course, we need very broad engagement on this topic. So it's kind of those circles as we build the plan and move forward. And also other public agencies. Obviously, many of you who are on this call today would want to sit at this table and anything beyond that. We want to talk a lot with you about what those initial actions would look like, how we define success, and other fundamental questions to our work. We already talked about coming back. So with that, Chair, I'll turn it back to you for our last few minutes. So hoping to have a much more robust conversation with the committee coming up.
Chair, before we,
go ahead,
if I
Dan.
could just add a few things. I feel we really, I feel we really, unfortunately, just due to factors of today, gave this. We spent at least an hour on each of these topics at the business and community advisory committees. We had a very robust discussion. And even then, even after spending all this time, both committees left with a, wow, this gives us a lot to think about. We want to come back and discuss this again at our next meeting and really present some answers to some of your questions and to some of this feedback. So what I want to leave this group with an understanding of is that as a project team, we are very committed to facilitating, putting together an anti-displacement working group made up of representatives suggested by our bodies and by our community associates to help really put together a robust group that can work on these. As Commissioner Fernando said, it may not be one table. It may be two tables. It may be three tables. It may be a combination of tables and subtables. It may be, we don't have all the answers to how this gets formed. We need help, but we have commitment. That's one thing we have. We have commitment and we have a desire to get our arms around what these topics are and how we can address them. So, Chair, my suggestion will be that between CMCs, between now and the May CMC, we find a time to put together an hour or a 90-minute working session on the topic of the anti-displacement working group, on these slides, on the questions on these slides, and to provide an opportunity for people to come visit with us, network with us as a project team, and let us hear your thoughts and ideas.
Dan, thank you. Go ahead, Sophia.
I just want to make sure you see that couple. There's hands up, just so in case you can't see that.
No, I can't see that. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Ellison has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you all for giving me a little bit of time here. Yeah, I think that this is a much needed discussion, and I'm glad that we're going to put together these tables, and so I'll wait for those tables to give my detailed opinions. But I did want to put out there that the University of Minnesota has done some studying around gentrification and has great definitions, and I think that we don't have to invent a definition, that we can have some grounding in a lot of the research that they've done there. And so I just wanted to put that out there so that folks know that, researchers have put us in some good hands, and we don't have to start from scratch there. And the other is just to urge us. I know that sometimes when we start talking about, really equity issues in a real way, some of the nuts and bolts of planning and engineering just kind of keep trucking along, even if we haven't answered some really important questions on the equity side of things. And so I just want to urge us to constantly check in with the members of this body and other groups to make sure that that we're not moving forward in a way that seems like this project is proceeding one way or another, whether or not. I think it's really important that we have, that we do, a housing needs study, that we, put together real proposals that people can react to. The real question I think that a lot of folks are going to want to know in the community is, what are our various levels of government doing to gain site control, or what are we doing to help them gain site control of these corridors and of some of the housing parcels? Otherwise, once the route's decided, I think that speculative buyers are going to come in, and I don't know that we're going to be able to keep up. And so I just wanted to put that out there and urge us to kind of move together and not see the displacement work as being as taking however long it takes, and the engineering work or whatever else, the route, deciding the route, that'll just kind of proceed as is. The two really should be interlocked and based on one another. So that's all. Thank you.
Totally. Thank you, Councilmember. Really important. And really important to point out that there's some great outside resources that we can help inform this conversation. Mayor Harris, you have the last word here.
Well, that's kind of scary, Mr. Chair, but thank you.
Well, okay, I'll have the last word. Go ahead.
Good. Question, comment, maybe it's comment more question. And I know I'm almost literally putting the cart before the horse on this, but obviously the temptation is there to think about with all the attention around President Biden's infrastructure proposal of trillions of dollars, but there's an emphasis there on equity. I would be curious, and maybe this is a conversation or an answer for the next meeting, perhaps. Where's the Met Council, the county, and the governor on potentially fast tracking this project? If that proposal on infrastructure reform was to get through, and there's an emphasis on equity, might this be one of the top prime projects in the state of Minnesota for funding? So I just kind of throw that out there to be kind of curious to see what the Met Council thinks about this, and if the governor is willing to put muscle behind that and work with our federal delegation. I know it's obviously we would have to fast track all of this conversation, but this may be the best window of opportunity we will have in a generation if that actually comes to fruition.
Great point, Shep. This infrastructure bill is an opportunity for Minnesota, and certainly for this work. So we'll get back to you, but great point. I know we're at time. We're past time. Thank you. I just think this is such a critical issue that we not give it short shrift. We know this is beginning. I know a lot of the wisdom is going to come from those of you who are here today. So please, we value your input. And if you have any comments on the process or questions, feel free again to reach out to Dan, Sophia, myself, Joan. But I like the idea of kind of even scheduling more time to really kind of dive into this displacement gentrification supporting. We need to support those who are here to serve. So, we'll be practical about that and learn what Commissioner Fernando has said to really ensure that this process doesn't really create even a bigger burden on those that are giving us that important feedback. So with that, I'm going to suggest we adjourn and know that we're going to be meeting very soon. I love that we're getting a cadence of monthly meetings and maybe even more when it's needed. May 13th is on the schedule, but we may be meeting even before. So Dan, Sophia,
Thanks, everyone.
burning we're missing? All right. Well then, thanks everyone. We'll see you very soon.